Thank you, Zoe. Oh, good morning. Oh, no, it's afternoon, isn't it? I've really got today quite woppy-doppy. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to have people joining us today, both in the chamber and online for our workshop and briefings day. Today we have two briefings or workshops to go through. The first of those is the Te Nui Joint Management Agreement schedule. Kirsty and Diana are seated in front of me, and I believe we have Paul Beverley online. So I shall hand over to you, Kirsty, to ably carry us through this paper.
Tēnā koutou katoa. This afternoon we're going to provide a workshop presentation on the schedules that have been developed for the Te Nui Joint Management Agreement that was entered into by the partner councils and Te Nui back in 2023. I'd like to introduce Paul Beverley, who is joining us online. Paul is a partner at Buddle Finlay, and he has been working with Te Nui and the partner councils to develop the JMA and the schedules. Diana is going to present the background and lead through the detail for the presentation, and then we will invite questions as we move through the presentation, and then it will come back to me at the end to just cover off the next steps. We'll just put the presentation up, please, Zoe. And Paul will be there to assist and provide support in responding to questions. So thank you for joining us today, Paul, from Wellington.
Thank you, Kirsten. Kia ora.
Thank you. So just the purpose of this presentation, as I mentioned, the Joint Management Agreement was entered into back in 2023, and at that time it signalled that we would be working together to develop schedules. So the purpose of this session with you is to outline the content of the schedules that have been developed by the partners. And the intent is that we will develop a formal report that will bring back to Council for approval at the end of this month. And that will then also include a delegation of authority for the approval to be provided at a joint management forum on the 30th of May. Now going to hand over to Diana to lead you through the sections.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. So I'm going to take you through two parts. First of all, we're just going through the brief background and context of where we got to get to this point. And then the second part will be going through the overview of what the schedules will be and that we'll be looking for approval for. And so a lot of this background you might be all familiar with, but I'll just repeat it anyway, just in case. So sort of the starting point would be in 2010, there was a deed in relation to co-governance and co-management of the Waipawa River, which was entered into between the Crown and Maniapoto. And then what came out of that to implement that deed was the Ngā Wai o Maniapoto Waipawa River Act 2012 that came into force. And Section 17 of that Act required Waipawa Council to enter into a joint management agreement with the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board. And so we entered into that joint management agreement in 2013, along with Otarohonga District Council, Waikato District Council, Waikato Regional Council and Waitomo District Councils. And it was a requirement that that joint management agreement, it was mandatory to include monitoring enforcement provisions for under the RMA, provisions relating to plan changes and provisions relating to resource consents. But the Act said that the JMA could also cover other matters. So we entered into the agreement in 2013. Then in 2022, the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Act came into force, which placed additional obligations on other councils to enter into a joint management agreement with Te Nui. That didn't place additional obligations on Waipawa or Waikato District Council just because of the area that that settlement covered. However, in 2023, in order to combine the two joint management agreements obligations, we entered into a brand new joint management agreement with Te Nui, which is set there, which was to replace the 2013 version. So that's where we got to. with that one. And so basically the new JMA set out broad principles, but it also provided for schedules to be agreed with by the parties within 12 months. And so in the last 12 months or so, we've been working with our partners to develop schedules to the agreement. And so that's where we are today, is to bring those schedules for approval. The agreed schedules build on the previous commitments of the 2013 JMA, and they include further enhancements to enable participation by tēnei nui in council processes. And yes, so there are schedules 3 to 10 to approve. Schedule 2 was going to be included, but that work is still under development, and I think that engagement strategy is going to sit outside of the actual schedules. Right, so that's the background. With any questions on that, where we've got to till now? No? Great. Oh, so I'll just take you now to an overview of schedules 3 to 10 and what they cover. So Schedule 3 covers sites of significance, and this basically outlines a process for council and Te Nui to identify sites of significance and to include these sites in the district plan over time. So that's really the subject matter of Schedule 3. Schedule 4 covers the process for the transfer of powers under the Resource Management Act to Te Nui. And this really reflects the ability to do this in Section 33 of the RMA, but it sets out the process that we will engage in order to ever go down that path. If I'm going too quickly, please let me know if there's any questions. Schedule 5, that covers the RMA planning process. It really sets out the process that we'll follow to ensure early engagement on relevant district plan changes. And this really reflects what's in Section 22 of the 2012 Act, and also it's something that we also had in our very similar provisions in our 2013 JMA. We've got Schedule 6, which is about monitoring enforcement. And so council has monitoring and enforcement functions under the RMA. And this schedule sets out a process for Te Nui's involvement in those processes. And again, this reflects what was in the 2012 Act, and also there were similar requirements in Clause 5 of our previous joint management agreement. Schedule 7 covers the process for involving participation in the RMA consent process. So this really sets out additional information sharing requirements and also involvement in that process. Again, this is something that's it's mandatory to cover as set out in Section 23 of our 2012 Act, and it's also something we have similar provisions in Clause 7 of our 2013 JMA. Schedule 8 is a new schedule that we didn't have equivalent provisions for in our previous JMA, but this sets out requirements for early engagement on matters of interest to Te Nui in relation to processes under the LGA, so the Local Government Act 2002. And this really, I guess, in a way, formalises what we would do in practice. So it sets out sort of that early involvement and engagement on relevant matters. So that's what that schedule covers. And likewise, Schedule 9, it does the same things, but with other statutory processes. So not the Local Government Act 2002, but other functions that we have, such as the Reserves Act or other functions. And it sets out a requirement, again, for early engagement with Te Nui on relevant matters of interest. And again, we would see that as something that we do in practice, but that formalises this in the agreement. And finally, sorry. Oh, yeah. And finally, Schedule 10 covers resourcing and capacity building. So it sets out a process for us to discuss how we can discuss, I guess, the nature and scope of resourcing by council to Te Nihinui. And so it sets out things that we might explore, like funding, internships, recruitment, professional development, all the matters that you see there on the screen. And again, this isn't something that we had in our previous JMA, but it's something that we'd want to be building on in terms of, and it sort of aligns with our duties under the Local Government Act to foster the capacity of Māori to contribute to council decision-making processes. Yeah, so that's really a whistle-stop tour of what the schedules provide. And hopefully that will give you sort of an understanding of the sort of subject matter that's covered by the schedules. Next step.
So just with regard to next steps, so each of the partner councils are now seeking approval to the schedules. And the intention for Waipa District Council is that we will bring a formal report to you at the council meeting on the 28th of May. We'll be seeking approval also for the delegation of authority to the mayor or her delegate to provide written agreement on behalf of council, and acknowledging that Councillor Dale Marie Morgan is the alternate for Mayor Susan in respect of this governance forum. And then on the 30th of May, the JMA schedules will be presented to the Te Nihinui Joint Management Agreement Co-Governance Forum for endorsement. So absolutely happy to respond to any questions, or Paul, you're online. If there's anything further that you would like to add to what's already been presented, would be great. Thank you.
Oh, just very quickly, thank you, Kirsty. No, look, I thought there was an excellent summary from Diana and yourself. I don't have anything particular to add at the moment, but very happy to assist in answering any questions.
Thanks, team. Thanks, Paul, online. Any questions for Paul in respect to this? As you said, it's pretty comprehensive summary of the schedules and their purpose and roles. So any questions for these people before we let them get on? Mike.
Just a comment more than anything else, it's around that Schedule 10, that second bullet point there, which you alluded to, Diana. And I guess it's about building that partnership, but also capacity. And I think, you know, all those things down there around the sort of internship and the professional development and all the joint stuff. It's not just about building all that, but it's about sort of getting joint better understandings between us all. And therefore the relationships can only sort of get stronger. So, yeah, I sort of read that bit and thought it was particularly good.
So through the chair, I think this is consistent with our desire to move from engagement with iwi to authentic and meaningful partnership, and builds on the work that we've undertaken through the development of Ahuaki, our Waipa Community Spatial Plan. There are some conversations, well advanced and will continue to be built on with Te Nihinui, looking at exploring matters of interest to them and how we, we can collaborate effectively. We've seen that with Waikato Tainui. Obviously, they've, well established and got a significant lead on Te Nihinui, but we've been able to effect some really great positive work, particularly in the procurement and learning and development space. So if we can, build on that too with our Te Nihinui partners, I think that's something that is really exciting and presents really positive opportunities. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. Any other questions or comments for the team before they get on their merry way? No other comments? No. Look, thank you very much for that, and we look forward to the report later this month.
Thank you, Paul, for joining
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Moving on then to our next item and final workshop for today. It connects or is related to passenger transport. I believe we have Eric floating around outside, and we have a number of people expecting to attend, I believe, from the Waikato Regional Council, but we may just have to pause for a couple of minutes because we'll just see if these people are with us just at present. Good afternoon. I'll call the workshop back to order. We're just about to kick off for our second and final workshop for the day on passenger transport. And we have some guests today from the Waikato Regional Council. Lovely to see you with us. Trudy Knight, is that correct? Nigel King and Vince Call, is that correct?
Yes, correct. Just apologies from Trudy.
She's not with us today. On.
I've got
Lovely, great. Well, you obviously have Eric Vanderwell with you. So how about I pass to Eric? Are you going to introduce this item for us? Thank you. Perfect, excellent. Welcome to Waipa. Lovely to have you all here with us for this very topical conversation.
Thanks, Susan and councillors. So this sort of forms our quarterly informal workshop regarding passenger transport for Waipa. So we've invited the regional council staff to come and present. They're the experts and they've done a lot of work on their reporting and presentation of, I guess, data of how the buses are being used. So they've got a presentation. Looks like the technology is working well. Maybe, Nigel, I've asked you to introduce yourselves and your roles, and then we can just go through the presentation. But I do ask, any questions, can they be left until the end of the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors. My name is Nigel King. I'm the Team Leader of Transport Policy and Programs at Waikato Regional Council.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. Sorry. My name is Vincent Quell. I'm the Team Leader for the Bus Contracts and Insights team.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kana Sakai. I'm a Senior Transport Analyst.
Happy to meet you all.
So really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Just to give you a quick sort of update around the public transport performance in Waipa. So I will just get into the slide now. Okay. Okay, so just for context settings, for the Waipa network, we've actually got 2 bus routes running within the district. So we've got Cambridge, number 20, and Te Awamutu, number 24. In April last year, we've gone through a big transformation for the network. So we have fully electrified the bus fleet for the network in Waipa. We have also doubled the timetables for the network. Yep. And in terms of the EV, so we also got charging depots built in Kihikihi and Leamington. So in terms of the performance, sorry, we jump into it. Just some of the photos in terms of the new EV vehicles that's running with the new district. As well as the charging facilities that we got in Kihikihi. So in terms of the patronage, so we're seeing a really positive and strong growth for the Waipa network. As you will see, like before COVID, average sort of patronage is around 17,000 each quarter, and after the service improvement or enhancement in April last year, we're seeing about 30,000 passengers per quarter, so roughly 10,000 patronage each month. And in terms of the growth, so for Cambridge, we are seeing about 48% growth over the last 12 months in terms of patronage. And for Te Awamutu, it's about 35% increase. And I guess another interesting trend was that historically, I think the patronage is usually higher with the Te Awamutu bus route, but now we're seeing a bit of catch up from Cambridge, and they're pretty even now in terms of the monthly patronage between both routes. So this is just a slide just to show in terms of the user profile. As you'll see from that pie chart, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but we'll distribute the slides afterwards. But in terms of the user profile, so majority of the users is adult users. So it's about 45%, and 29% is your child, so which is between age 5 to 18. So we count our use as part of the child sort of user group, as well as senior user, which is make up around 15%. And I guess over the same period, we're also seeing some change to the user profile as well. So if we compare Q2 to Q4 from 2023, we're actually seeing quite a bit of a growth in terms of adult users and child users, as well as senior users. So as you will see from that table, so 50% growth for the adult users, 22% for child, and 67% for senior users. Okay. Oh. So I'm just going to introduce you in the next couple of slides, well, not slides. So just to show in terms of where people are getting on and off the buses. So we actually got a spatial tool that we can demonstrate in terms of where people is boarding and alighting, as well as the origin and destinations.
Pretty pleasing growth, I'd have to say.
Can I have the microphone? It looks quite tiny, but here the bubbles are showing the size of the onboarding and alighting. So I try to enlarge this. That's too small. Yeah, you can see a big bubble in Te-a-Mutu, and in Cambridge, the bubble is more split. And also you can see the bubbles in Hamilton. And these are showing the total of the route 20 Cambridge, 24 Te-a-Mutu, as well as Te Kuiti connector and the Tokora connector. And it's showing the blue is onboarding and the yellow is alighting. And you can see the split among passenger profile, like adult or child. Also, I can show you the AM peak and inter peak and PM peak. From here, what I can tell is, okay, let's look at the destination, the key destination for the Cambridge and the Te-a-Mutu route. Let's see. Here, I'm showing the example. Let's choose Cambridge. And let's choose, bear with me. Let's choose use passenger type. And it's showing big bubble here. This is the location of the schools like Hamilton Boys. And there is few schools along Clyde Street here. And now I'm showing Te-a-Mutu. And I choose seniors. Bear with me. Where's senior? I can't scroll down. Oops. Sorry, technical issue. Jerry is not a good example. Okay, let's choose senior. And I can also choose senior super gold. Okay, and
This will show actually all the Supergo users where they're getting on and off each bus stop along this Te Awamutu bus route. So it's actually quite a powerful tool if you want to kind of drill down to the detail of like where people go get on a bus and get off the bus at what time of day and or what sort of users. And linking to this is actually the metadata, so we can actually run kind of spreadsheets if you need, like with the numbers. And I think for this tool, we can also show the origin and destinations. I want to kind of go into.
Yeah, and for Te Awamutu senior users, you can see big bubble here. It's next to the hospital. So it's showing the seniors often get off at the hospital. Right, and now I'm showing the origin destination combination matrix. And here, the Cambridge, within Cambridge travel. Sorry.
There's two people.
Let me use this as an example. Yeah.
Yeah, from this time period, there was about 3,000 journeys within Cambridge, which is far smaller than the journeys between Hamilton Center and Cambridge, but certainly there's some travel within the Cambridge. And I can tell the same story for Te Awamutu. Within Te Awamutu, there was about 1,500. Yeah, 1,500. That is far smaller than Hamilton Center and the Te Awamutu travel, but definitely there's certain level of within the township travel.
Yeah, so with this origin and destination matrix, we can show like how many people actually traveling on Cambridge bus route and traveling within Cambridge, for example. You can see from that table, like about 3,000 people actually using the Cambridge bus to travel around the town. And I think in terms of traveling to Hamilton, it's about 33,000. So it's probably 80% of your trip is actually going into Hamilton. And probably 10 to 15% is within kind of your local area. Yeah, and depending on where you want to cast in terms of your search, you can kind of limit your kind of boundaries. And so there's a lot more things you can play with the metrics. Yeah. So I guess this session, we're probably not going to drill down to all the details, but it's just a way to show that we've got capability. Like if you guys want to run any specific queries around origin and destinations. And I guess I've been talking to our IT team as well in terms of if we can release the access to your team. So I think that's something we're working through. Like there's some licensing issues, but we are working our way to see if we can maybe share this link to your staff.
That'd be really helpful. That's amazing. I can see it's a pretty powerful sort of tool there. But it takes a little bit of getting used to try and work, obviously.
Yeah.
But that would be amazing.
Cool. So just a couple of slides. So April timetable change. So we had some minor changes to the timetable that put in place in April. And then we also introduced 2 additional trips connecting to Cambridge High School. That was largely in response to customer feedback. They wanted an access to the Cambridge High School and also to help with the loading issues because we had loading issues in the morning and AM peak. That's why we put on extra buses. To enable the change, we had to remove some of the evening service that are not well patronized, just in order to ensure we can implement this change in a cost neutral way. So we have taken out a few trips in the evenings. So just a slide just to show that we are actively working with the community around marketing and promotions. So throughout the years, there's a lot of different events that we participate in. We are actively engaging with different type user groups, and so that just in terms of like balloons visit, and there's some school holiday programs that we have developed working with the local schools. Yes. So Te Kiroti and Tokoroa connectors. So again, those are the two services that's connecting into your district. So we didn't get a chance to show that on that origin destination, but we can actually, from the analysis, there's quite a lot of people using those two services to, whether it's from Te Amitu or from Cambridge, to get into Hamilton.
Claire.
Yeah, we're supposed to wait at the end. It's just that I was interested to know if you think that service can continue, because I see that there was a workaround that you were able to use some internal funding, but do you think it will be able to be continued in the longer term?
Through you, Mayor. So, through your worship. So, in terms of the funding situation with Te Kiroti and Tokoroa connectors, so we have secure 3-year funding from Inter-TA, so over the 24 to 27 period. In regards to local share, I think Nigel will touch on the next slide around regional rating. So, the current sort of assumption is that once we move into regional rating, we should have enough local share to support the continuation of service. Cool, and I'll pass on this to a nice segue.
Thank you, Vince. So the slide that you've got up there on screen now just touches on what the council may recall. End of last year, there was a presentation from my manager, Brian, that came out to talk about this and what we've been doing in terms of consultation through our annual plan. That's obviously just recently closed, and we had approximately 118 responses on this one. So council will be working their way through that in deliberations on Monday. But what, as Vincent alluded to, we will be looking to pick up that local share contribution through rating from 1 July this year. And so we have been operating under the principle that we're trying to do this and make it as fair, simple, efficient as possible. So we recognise that the model recognises different levels of access for community and public transport services across the region. So based on the proposal that we went out with, that was proposing 5 different rating categories across 3 geographical areas. That was the Hamilton metro area, a central region and a rural region. And the rating cost of properties within each of those 5 rating categories is based on the level of services available to each of the communities that are in there. So that's the Hamilton metro, central serviced, central unserviced, rural serviced and rural unserviced. And so on that basis, that's what we have been going out to look for. So all rating units within each of those areas pays the same under the current proposal. The last couple of bullet points that are identified up there show that there were 2 options for that collection within Hamilton City, and that was based on capital value versus a flat rate charge, which differed in some of the other areas. So there has been fairly good feedback in terms of what we're working through. So yeah, as I mentioned, deliberations for that will occur on Monday next week. We're looking forward to hearing what came through. So I can't remember the exact figures overall, but certainly transport had the majority that we're going to work through. But as Vincent mentioned, from 1 July, the Regional Council will take on that responsibility of collecting what was the local share that was otherwise recovered from Waipa. Again, folks may recall from earlier presentations, the principle behind that is to make it as easy as possible to continue to undertake planning across the region. And it's probably just worth noting that we can't do that in isolation. And so we'll obviously still be working at a staff level, staff to staff, to make sure that the planning options that we've got are correct. And again, testing that with elected members, because we recognise that the folks who are closest to their communities are the district authorities. And so we continue to look for those opportunities to work together as we plan. So that's actually probably the basis of mine. I think that's the last one before we move into questions. So over to you, Mia.
Thank you, Nigel and Vince and Kana. Really interesting. Really fascinated by that matrix. It's pretty powerful. I can see lots of little boffins ticking away, trying to work their way through, working out where all of our residents, alight and dismount. So look, really, I'll throw the floor open for questions from these people in respect to the presentation. Roger, I knew you'd have questions.
Well,
What?
actually, I hope you'll bear with me on this, if I can ask for your indulgence. I'm actually going to introduce a different topic, and this commentary was actually inspired by the announcement in this morning's news that Timaru, after having trialled their Flex service for 5 years, which they introduced in 2020, has now confirmed that will be continuing. And it's on that topic of local public transport for Cambridge that I would like to perhaps make a few comments. I think that the growth in public transport, as you've explained it, has been really, really encouraging with both the Te Awamutu and Cambridge services. The expanded service is very much a part of that, but so are the improved plant that you've put on there, and definitely the frequency of the service. As you mentioned, in the origin and destination data that you shared with us, and that reflects some data that you shared with me through the Future Proof Committee, I think that really it emphasises that the majority of that traffic is Cambridge to Hamilton. But surprisingly, about 27 one-way and 22% is purely within Hamilton. So Hamiltonians using that service as a local service for them. And the level of local service for Cambridge is quite small, 6 to 4% and 1 to 2% within Cambridge. So actually the current service is not really providing a strong local transport. It's providing the essential link to Hamilton. Now, Liz and I attended the Future Proof planning session last week, and the Waikato Regional Connections public transport service plans to optimise the public transport across the region showed increase in services or development of services in the short, medium and long term within the scope of existing resources. And you mentioned services in Huntly, Te Kawhaka, Te Aroha, Lawrenceville, Matamata, Raglan, Thames, Coromandel. But actually in the presentation there was no mention of any development of the Cambridge or Te Awamutu services. And after a question by Liz, it was identified that perhaps could be associated with the Cambridge connections. And I just question whether, although I can see the relevance and the inclusion in there, whether that's perhaps leaving it too long. I'm just concerned that we may be left behind in the allocation of resources that you're already starting to look at allocating across that next 9 years. Now, to kind of background this, Cambridge is undoubtedly the largest rural service town within the future-proof area. And if you look at the population of those other rural communities, Matamata 9,000, Warrensville 9,000, Huntly 8,000, Thames 7,000. You know, when you look at Cambridge, which is just the urban population of 21,000, Cambridge is undoubtedly far larger in terms of it being a route, and it's developing fast, tier one, so we're going to see a lot of growth. And much of that growth is actually occurring in that rural urban boundary. So although we're talking about an urban population, we're now spreading across that boundary, and in fact, the larger population of Cambridge is in excess of 30,000.
Roger, can I just interrupt? Do you have a question here for these people?
Yes, I just wanted to just background a little bit to say that although you've developed the youth facility within the service, it's the elderly population that we've got in Cambridge, where 40% of the population in Cambridge is actually seniors, and it's beyond the 50-year, which would be the kind of target for developing a local bus service. And what I'm basically asking is now the time for us in terms of a district council to work with you to ensure that we've got the allocation of resources within your planning now to develop a local community bus, whether it's the flex service that we've got in Timbrook, or whether it's an orbiter. And I'm just concerned that we're missing out, and whether we now really need to look at developing a business case for the introduction of a local service.
Okay. I'll try to provide a response. Sorry, Your Worship. So just a bit of clarification around the PT service, level service plan. So the plan was to help inform the contract renewal process. So at the moment, we've got 5 contracts that's about to be renewed. So that plan is actually looking at the future network, what we need to deliver in the northern part of Waikato in order to inform the next tender round. Since the Waipa network was recently, I think it was it was introduced last year. So that wasn't included in the scope of that PT service plan. But that doesn't mean we haven't considered any improvement for the Waipa network. And I guess, in fact, we actually put up 4 different trial servers in terms of our funding bids to InterTA last year. I think within the bid, there was the Cambridge internal servers, there was the Te Amo to Cambridge connection, and then the Te Amo to internal servers. But unfortunately, we didn't get any funding from InterTA. And I guess doesn't mean we can't implement the service, but it will have to be entirely funded by local community. So I guess that's the challenge. We don't have the national funding to support any new trials or new improvement within this 24-27 funding round.
If we were to work together to develop a business plan that justifies the introduction of a local service, as I said, irrespective of whether it's a flex or an orbiter, can we again and again put a proposal into NZTA to get local funding?
Absolutely, and I will encourage council, I guess, both council to work together in kind of scoping up some sort of improvement options going forward. In terms of the funding process, NZTA will start in terms of the next NLTP process next year, probably mid next year, and that's where you need to develop a business case if you want to be considered as part of for funding in 27 to 30.
So I suppose that question goes to Eric then. Are we in a position to develop a business case for the introduction of a local transport service?
Thanks, Rod. You said at staff level, yes, we can respond to that. We've already developed a business case for the current LTP. I believe it's unfunded, so we've already got the bones of a system in place. But I think the vexing issue is just a quantum of resources needed in terms of if it goes ahead, how much is it going to cost per year to do. So I think it's tracking at, it will be well over $300,000 or $400,000 per town. It's if there's no contribution from NZTA.
Yeah, but if we did get contribution, which would be supported by a business plan, then that would be again the 51% from NZTA funding, which would reduce that to 200. I mean, the introduction of a local transport service is undoubtedly going to be a cost to start with. And you really don't know what the demand is going to be until you actually get wheels on the road. So you can get as many comments coming back saying, we'll use it, but until you actually get the wheels on the road, you never really know. So I think the urgency is to get that kind of introduction there somehow.
I think just to close that one out, I think the other thing, it's the resetting of the Cambridge Connections project. I think is a key enabler of that.
Thanks, Eric. Philip has had his hand up, and then to you, Claire.
Thanks. Thank you. And thanks for your presentation today. Just going on, I was going to add some comments about what Roger's brought up as well. You talked about rating and things like that. Talking with a regional councillor recently, you were introducing targeted rates from the 1st of July, and that was a way of potentially getting a service up and running for Cambridge. What's the and build some momentum. We need to build some momentum of that. Cambridge Connection is going to help with that. What's the go with that if we introduced a targeted rate in order to get a public transport system set up for Cambridge?
We did, and so that's what we need to take account of for when those, so the rates, as I understand it, have been identified for next year, so we'll need to operate within inside of the financial envelope that we've got. And so we'll look at that as part of the wider regional planning. Once we have a firm understanding and an idea about what that demand looks like, and I think engaging obviously with Waipa District Council and both elected members and staff, that gives us the greatest amount of information for us to go ahead and start working on what these business cases look like to support that next level of funding. As Vincent mentioned, a few trial services had been put forward that we haven't been successful with yet. But in terms of the amount of, I guess, local interest and local demand that is required for that and the reallocation of that local share, we absolutely need to work with what is the Future Proof PT Subcommittee and Regional Transport Committee in order to make those next planning decisions.
So 2 comments on that. I think, if I read it right, your data was showing that it was over 3,000 passengers passengers utilising the service within Cambridge, or was that correct? So that had increased dramatically. And what about the high school, the trip going around, the journey going around past the high school and things like that? Has that been part of that 3,000?
Yeah, but I think that change was introduced April this year, so we won't have any data. Probably in the next quarter, we'll start to see some.
And then, I was with a retirement home again this week, and they want the bus service. They either have no cars or they have only 1 car per family, per household. We have all of the younger families have, 2 or 3 cars. But just a couple of quick little questions. The bike racks in front of the buses, are they up and running? Are they operational again now?
This week, yes.
I was in Wellington last week and saw that they had bus racks being utilised. So that's really good. And then a couple of the, in both towns and things like that, a couple of the popular on and off bus stops, bike racks to be locked up. I certainly noticed the one at St Andrew's Church, which is a lot of high school students get on that, and Hamilton students get on. Bikes are just getting locked up to a power pole, fence, or whatever. The one opposite the town hall there, they've got a proper bike rack, which is great. So funding for some more bike racks in a couple of the key on-off places in both towns would be something to look at as well. So, and then just lastly, coming over to TA today, driving over from Cambridge to TA today, I followed a double-decker electric Waipa bus. So there's obviously another route that's just started now, although it did have transit on the top, so on the screen. But yeah, I saw it coming over and yeah, laughed my head off. I knew this was coming out today. So.
Thanks, Philip. Claire.
Yeah, thanks. It's really great to be having a discussion about how we could increase local services for public transport. I'm definitely keen on that, interested in that. But like you said, Eric, that you've already done a bit of work on business plans, and it looked like $300,000 to $400,000 would be a ballpark figure, because like I understand the cost of that Timaru service is actually about $2 million a year. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. So that would be one question, you know, how do you sort of account for that difference in cost for something that's a trial that, you know, we know has been operational. And then the other thing I'd like to know a bit more about is that if the funding of or the rating for public transport is going to move to the regional council, but we're wanting a local service, yeah, that we can develop business cases for, and by the sound of it, make applications to NZTA. But there'd been some sort of partnership or collaboration that would be needed, and eventually whatever's approved would still be rated through the regional council. If you just could give us a bit more detail around that, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Sorry, if I could answer your first question. So that information was based on, it's a recent business case that was based on data from, I think it was a 2019, 2018 business case that was used to fund the current services that we've just got.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it was just indexed for inflation. So it had minimal design input. It just assumed a coverage service of the two towns, but very limited runs and a very limited duration during the day. So you could wind up and down your costs really easily based on your first start time and your last. So yeah, so that's, but there's, yeah, so that was the first one.
It's really helpful, because if we are going to do more discussions on this, we do have to think about the frequency of service. Yeah, by the sound of it, the length of the run and things. Yeah, yeah, cool.
And there was a second question you had there, Claire, and
it's relating to how the funding and the rating would work. Yeah, so thanks.
Yeah, so we'll need to obviously do some of that baseline work that we were just talking about here, and then use that to incorporate it into, I guess, the budget for each year as we go to look and strike those rates at that targeted level. Yep.
cool. Excellent stuff. Yep, just last question, because I think we have to wind this conversation up, but Mike?
Yeah, thanks through the mayor. A couple of comments. One's on Roger's thing about the flexi, about Timaru carrying on, because I have brought to this table, I counted 21 buses down there over 5 days as I was just walking around, the little Mercedes buses, with a grand total of 18 passengers. This was a couple of holidays ago. Maximum I ever saw on one was 4. Most were 0. There was 1, 3 and some 2s and some the odd 1. So yeah, I'm going to be really interested to read that article and read their data to see that they're carrying on. I've got 3 quick questions, and it may be in some other information, and I don't expect answers right now. The average patronage per trip and the average capacity of seats filled, like per trip. And the last one might link to this. is which, if any of the bus services are actually at capacity. So like at what time of the day of the week, because that might help for me have a rationale of why the buses are the size they are. Because some of them might be full because of kids or whatever. So yeah, and I don't expect an answer now off the top of your head, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Look, I just will just bring the conversation to a close here. Look, I just want to thank you for coming today and providing us with this update. It's always a really topical issue around this table. Obviously, a lot of passion and personal interest from some of the members, but really cognizant of how that passenger transport plays to unlocking some that connectivity and movability of our community, and not everybody has access to or desire to drive cars. So really exciting to see that there's been real uptake in terms of those data, in terms of the data around bus usage from both towns, which is fantastic. Very fascinating piece of software there, and really it would be great if you could, it would be helpful if you could enable our staff to have access to that. Yeah, really fascinating piece, and really look forward to hearing of further investigations in terms of the prospect of providing some form of improved internal or local public transport services for both our towns. So look, thanks for your work and for your presentation today. It was much appreciated. Ka kite. Kia ora, thank you.